English by the Nature Method, Chapter 38. The 38th Chapter, A Visit to an English Family. Before they started on the trip, Storm's manager had asked him to go one day to the manager of the London branch of the firm. It would interest the young man, he thought, to see the works in a big English office, and he would learn something which might be useful to him later on in his work at home. So one day during the last week of their stay in London, Storm went to pay a visit to the London office. Mr. Edwards, the manager, greeted him very kindly. "How do you do?" he said. "Your manager wrote and told me that you were coming, so I have been expecting you. But come into my private office and tell me what you have been doing. Your manager and I are old friends, you know. He was over here to study the business when I was a young man in this same office. So we know each other very well. I shall be glad to show you round the place." A little later, when they were walking around, Mr. Edwards showed him several modern machines that they had just bought. "Come and have a look at this one," he said, showing him an adding machine. "This is an adding machine. It's a very useful machine, which saves us a lot of time. Before we got it, we had a man who sat all day adding figures. Now the same man does the same work in less than 3 hours with this machine. That means more than 5 hours saved every day." Storm was shown some other modern things that are useful in an office, and then they went back to the manager's private office. After Storm had told the manager what they had seen and done during their stay in England, Mr. Edwards said, "I know what it is like to be in a foreign country as a tourist. You do not get into conversation with Englishmen as much as you would like to. So if you would like to come and dine with us tonight, all 4 of you, my wife and I would be very pleased. Could you come at 7:30? "Thank you very much. That is very kind of you," Storm answered. "But I am afraid that we have not brought the right clothes for that. We took as little luggage as possible, and none of us have brought our dinner jackets. We did not expect an invitation to dinner, you know." At this reply Mr. Edwards laughed, saying, "My dear boy, what a funny idea that it would be necessary for you to wear a dinner jacket. I am afraid that it's an idea that many foreigners have. I know that some English writers give that impression in their books. Kipling, for example, gives the impression that Englishmen wear dinner jackets for dinner every evening. But this may only be said of some people of the upper classes. The Englishman of the middle classes wears his usual clothes for dinner, and he is not so much interested in the clothes that people wear as in the people wearing them. Speaking for myself, it has not been necessary for me to wear a dinner jacket for 6 months, and the last time I wore mine, it was only because it was necessary to give it some fresh air." "May we expect you to dinner then, Storm?" "Yes, thank you. We shall be very pleased to come." When Storm told his friends about the invitation, they were all very pleased at the chance of speaking to an Englishman and his family in their home. They arrived at Mr. Edwards' little before 7:30, and were shown into the sitting room. They found Mr. Edwards with his wife, and he introduced Storm to his wife with the words, "My dear, may I introduce Mr. Storm to you? Mrs. Storm, this is my wife." Storm greeted her, saying, "How do you do, Mrs. Edwards?" And then he introduced his friends. "This is Mr. Miller, our teacher, and these are my 2 friends, Mr. Wood and Mr. Brown." Mr. Miller thanked Mr. and Mrs. Edwards for their kindness in asking 3 strangers, 3 men whom they didn't know, to dinner. After a glass of wine, Mr. Edwards said to Mr. Miller, Brown and Wood, "May Mr. Storm and I leave you for a few minutes? There is something I want to speak to Mr. Storm about before dinner. Will you fill the gentlemen's glasses again, my dear?" he said to his wife, "while Mr. Storm and I go into my study." Mr. Edwards' study was a nice large room with bookshelves along 2 walls, a fireplace in front of which there were some big chairs, and a large writing table, with many papers and books. Over the fireplace was a shelf on which there was a fine old clock, "Sit down in the chair, Storm," said Mr. Edwards. "I will take this one." He then began, "How would you like to stay on here a few months longer, Storm? You see, one of my young men at the office was taken ill last week, and he will not be able to start work again until the beginning of next year. He has been doing all our foreign correspondence. Most of it is with your country, you know. He writes your language quite well, and knows something of several other languages besides. I might get another young man to take his position, but it may be difficult, as it is only for 6 months. You see, I told him that he could have his position back when he is well again. But tell me now what work you are used to, and whether you think you would be able to fill the position." Storm told him then that he was quite used to business correspondence. He had written all the letters for his manager for some time, and he was used to all office work. "I should like very much to stay on over here, but don't you think it would be difficult for my manager to find somebody to fill my position so suddenly? What will he say to it? It's for him to decide." "I will send him a telegram and ask him about it. If he sends a quick reply by telegram, which is so much quicker than a letter, the whole thing can be decided in a day or two." When they had finished their conversation, they went in to have dinner with the others.